Hey everyone, welcome to the show, My So-Called Fabulous. I'm Tiffany, and welcome everyone. And I do listen to you a lot, and you have asked me for a few things. One that I'm very familiar with, which is divorce. I have 2 divorces, I would say I'm not proud of him, but you know what? I'm proud of the person that I am now. A lot of growth. And we talked with a fabulous woman last season about divorce, and that really sparked some interest because I think a lot of us feel alone. So I have brought back this fabulous woman, and I talked to her and I asked her if she wouldn't mind sharing because she has gone through 2 divorces, and she's a sweet, sweet friend of mine from Dallas. Everyone, welcome back to the show, Heather Anderson of So Heather Blog. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's so good to see you. Always so good to see you. I've come to Dallas, not far at all from Fort Worth, and these women in my age bracket are so kind to me and welcoming. And you don't always find that with our group, right?
No, exactly. Well, we love you. And I just felt an instant connection from the moment we met.
So fun, so fun. Well, thank you. Heather, you are a successful blogger. You have over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, on your channel. You're in fashion, you do beauty, you are the walking epitome of that. But you have a connection to women that makes them feel special. Not everyone can go with a certain price point, but you make everyone feel beautiful. And I do know that because you make me feel beautiful. Aww. And thank you. And I know that was your mission, right?
Yes, definitely. I just try to make women, look and feel like the best versions of themselves. And, I've been an influencer for over 10 years. And then I started my YouTube channel about 4 years ago. And so, but really sort of underneath all of it is, I really just want to help women feel confident and feel like the best versions of themselves.
Absolutely. And y'all, she can rock denim. We're going to give you her Instagram information. She and YouTube obviously will be in the show notes, but this gal, you can see her on YouTube now, in her Veronica Beard, beautiful suit. I asked her yesterday, what are you wearing? And she told me, I was like, oh, I have one of those too. So, but thank you for coming on. And Heather, you and I both have been through some very trying times with previous marriage, previous partners. Mm-hmm. And I know you're finding out and you're talking to women in your audience, in your group, and I have as well, that a lot of women feel alone.
Yeah.
And I have been there. I mean, I have 2 divorces, and it's tough.
It's hard.
Tell us about what's been going on and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, sure. So, I've actually been married and divorced twice. I married the first time my high school sweetheart at age 19. Because I actually was pregnant, and I had, I got pregnant in college, and so we decided to get married. I did end up finishing college and had 2 wonderful children with that man, and so I don't regret it for one second because obviously my 2 amazing kids came from him, so that was wonderful. That marriage lasted about 12 years, and then I was single for about 3 years and then married husband number 2, and we were married for 15 years.
Wow.
And that marriage ended. I was actually just final a few weeks ago, but I, filed for divorce about 1.5 years ago and have been living on my own now for about 1.5 years. So, it's been difficult, but I've had a lot of growth through it all. And I have learned a lot about myself and about how to love myself. And I know a lot of women are going through the same thing because I get comments and, questions from women about relationships, even though that's not something that I talk about often. I have talked about it enough on my channel that people do know that I've gone through this. Mm-hmm. Some people anyway.
Right. And you know what, Heather, I think you have to be transparent. We do, for sure.
Yes.
I think everyone should, but we do for certain. And the fact that you said you had a pregnancy with the first one is huge because the number of people that resonate about that, because the worst thing you can do, I've had a lot of therapists on this show, is shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And just own it. You have beautiful children, And I think
exactly.
that we need to share that.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And I want to be a real authentic person. It's really easy to get for people to see me on Instagram or on YouTube and look at me and think, oh, she's all about fashion, or she's all about clothes, or all about beauty, or whatever. Like, no, that's obviously not at all what I'm, I love that. But that's just a small piece of the pie that, helps women feel good. I also believe it's helps women to share what I have gone through, the pain that I have gone through in these unhealthy relationships. It's happened to me since I was 16 years old. I've been in numerous unhealthy relationships. It's not just one marriage or the other marriage. I've had a few boyfriends, I've dated a few guys, of course, along the way. And I've noticed a pattern in all of them that they've pretty much all been unhealthy. And so I kind of had to start to look at, hey, what's the common denominator? It's me.
Is it?
And so, what was I doing in these relationships that was contributing to, me staying in these unhealthy relationships for so long? Because that's not what I wanted to do, but there was a lot of fear there, fear of leaving and, fear of the unknown. That's a big thing as well. Like,
right.
What if I leave, I'm going to be alone, and how am I going to make it on my own, and all these things, because I've been in relationships since I was 16. Like I said, I really haven't been alone until like the last year and a half. So it's a change.
So tell me what you think was your contribution to the downfall of your two marriages. I mean, I know what mine was, but tell us what you think, because you've done a lot of work on yourself.
Yes.
Because you have to work on yourself.
For sure. And so I would say that's, I'm actually grateful for the two marriages, because I wouldn't have done as much personal growth and as much work on myself had I not gone through those trying times. I would say the number one thing that I learned was that I can't change other people. I was taught even as a little girl, and I think just our society in general, or women in general, think, and I know I heard this growing up, like, oh, if you find a man that you love, well, you can just change him. You can change him and mold him into what you want him to be. Like, no, you can't change anyone except for yourself. And so the common pattern that I saw was looking outside of myself, thinking that if I changed them or fixed them, got them to, maybe stop drinking as much, if they behaved a certain way, if they were nicer to me, if they treated me better, then I would feel better. And so I was always focusing outwardly onto them, trying to change them. But really what I needed to do is look on the inside of me, and what do I need to do to myself, in order to own my own power and decide what I need to do in this situation, because changing them never works. No one's ever going to change until they themselves want to change.
So let me interrupt the show just for a minute. Eating healthy has always been a priority. However, when life gets busy, it makes it harder to maintain healthy eating habits, which is why I'm loving personal trainer food. Personal trainer food is an easy and cost-efficient way to have healthy meals ready in minutes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. With 75-plus restaurant-quality menu items to choose from and meal plans designed to fit your needs, these delicious meals make it easier than ever to reach your health goals. Simply select your plan, your meals, and get 7 to 24 days worth of meals delivered right to your doorstep. So far, y'all, my favorite meals are egg bites in the morning and fire-braised chicken breast during the day or at night. Head to personaltrainerfood.com to get started and use code Tiffany35 for 35% off your order. Again, that's personaltrainerfood.com. Use Tiffany35 at checkout. I did a divorce podcast last season with a friend of mine in Fort Worth, and I think I told you about her, Kelly Blancart.
Yes.
And I don't know if you get this, but I have a feeling you will, and maybe you do with your first marriage, but have women come up to me, and mostly friends, and say, should I leave? What would you do? And, first of all, I ask is, are you scared? Are you being hurt? If the answer is no, I would say, physically harmed, I would say, have you done the work? Right? Have you worked on this together and yourself?
Right.
Look inside, just like you just mentioned.
Right.
Look into yourself.
For sure. No, and I also want to point out that, there's different types of abuse. There, physical abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, verbal abuse, and they're all equally painful. And sometimes people think, well, just because you didn't have a bruise on your face and that means you weren't hurt, or that means that it's not that big a deal. It is a big deal. And, verbal abuse can be just as painful and detrimental to your soul and to your heart than getting punched in the face. So I wanted to say that.
Absolutely.
If you could just repeat the question, though. Now I lost my train of thought.
Oh, I mean, it is definitely, this takes so much of our mental energy, and this is so fresh for you. I mean, I know you left a year and a half ago, but it's still so fresh and new because every part of the divorce process is so difficult.
Right.
I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
So I was asking you, if you had a girlfriend come up to you, what would you say to her if she was searching?
To say, should I stay or should I
Yeah.
go? And I have definitely had that question, and I have asked myself that question many, many times before I actually decided to file for divorce, because women don't just wake up one morning and decide to get divorced and then they go file for divorce. Like, I had been thinking about it for years. I had been writing it down in my journal for years. What I would say is, one of the best books I ever read, it's called Should I Stay or Should I Go? By Dr. Romney. And that really helped me a lot in deciding whether or not to leave. And then I would also say, you're never not going to be afraid, because people will say like, oh, but I'm so afraid to leave. Well, you're always going to be afraid. It's not that I woke up one day and I wasn't afraid and so I left. No, I was afraid and I still left. And I think you kind of have to ask yourself, is the pain of staying going to be greater than the pain and fear of leaving? And when you can say to yourself, yes, the pain of staying would be greater than if I left, then that's how you know it's time to leave. At least that's how I knew it was time to leave. And I really started to feel it in my body. There's another really good book called The Body Keeps the Score, and I highly recommend anybody to read that. That's one of the best books on trauma and just self-discovery and everything. But it really talks about how you hold a lot of this trauma and, things in your body. And so your body speaks to you. So if you have anxiety attacks, panic attacks, headaches, I was having headaches, I was having kidney stones, I was having UTIs, I was having little anxiety and panic attacks. And then I just honestly thought to myself, like, I will not live as long if I stay in this marriage.
Right.
I want to know my grandchildren as long as possible. I want to be alive as long as possible. And so when I started to ask myself those questions, and even just make a list of like, what is this relationship costing me? Part of it was my mental health. Then that's not worth it. I have to take care of myself. No one's going to come rescue me except for me.
Right.
And so that's when I really decided I have to leave this marriage for my own well-being.
Exactly. And you're doing well.
Yeah, no, I mean, has it been hard? Absolutely. Has it been one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life? Absolutely. But I do have my peace. I have, I have my dignity. I have my peace. And, it's ups and downs, of course. It's been a year and a half now, so time has gone by. And the first 6 months, I would say, were definitely the hardest. It's getting a little bit easier now. I'm sort of, getting used to living alone. I did just buy a new puppy a couple months ago, and she's helping me a lot. And I'm still surrounding myself with my friends and community, and I go to the Al-Anon 12-step meetings, and those help me a lot as well. Yeah, that's something I would say. If anybody is struggling, just find a 12-step program. Al-Anon is for family members of alcoholics. They also have Codependence Anonymous, which is amazing. Love and Sex Addicts is another 12-step group. So I think that has also helped me tremendously.
So you talk about going to Al-Anon and the 12-step. What other healing modalities have you done? I mean, it's therapy
so I've had talk therapy for years, probably since I was about 32 or so. I started going to see a therapist, and not like every week for 20 years, but probably once a month, and then it went to like once every few months. And then recently, after my divorce, I've been going more often. Because I've needed it, right? So talk therapy has been very helpful. I would also say that I did EMDR, which is you kind of close your eyes. It's a little bit like hypnosis, and it sort of desensitizes traumas. So that helped me a lot as well. And then I would say the number one thing that helped me the most was going to this week-long sort of emotional healing program out in California. It's called the Hoffman Process. You can follow them on Instagram and learn more about them. Maybe you can link their website in your show notes. But it was amazing. Again, like I said, it was a week long. it lots of experiential therapy during that, lots of meditation, lots of visualization, getting your anger out, again, because you store it all in your body. So you have to move your body to get the anger out, to get the sadness out, to get the grief out. And so there was a lot of that in there. And it's also really tapping into your subconscious, because I also believe that, 95% of what we do is from our subconscious mind. And our subconscious is programmed from age 0 to 7. And so all of that's super fascinating to me. So if you really want to change your patterns in life today, you really have to tap into your subconscious. And I think the best ways to do that are meditation, and visualization and hypnosis.
Right.
Which I've done those as well, which are really profound.
I mean, and this information is so good because I don't think people really have the tools, they want to leave, they're angry.
Yes.
And dealing with your anger, of course, as
Right.
well. And, like we talked earlier about the shame and guilt. So what was the most difficult part of leaving?
I would say just the fear of the unknown, because and being on my own, financially, that was also really scary. Where, it's like if I made a list of all the things I was going to have to figure out once I filed for divorce, moving out, where am I going to live? What are all the bills that I'm going to have to pay? Like all the things. And so what I decided to do, instead of looking at them all at once, is just taking it one step at a time. Like what can I do tomorrow? I'm going to pick one thing and I'm going to do that one thing tomorrow. And then in the next day or two, I'll pick another thing and I'll do that. It's like baby steps. Mm-hmm. You can't just try to do all of it at once, because that will overwhelm you. And also just keeping, having a big support system was really helpful. Like my mom was there, my brothers were there for me, my friends. I couldn't have done it. God, I'm very spiritual and I have a really deep relationship with God. And so he helped me through a lot of it, going to church, things like that. I wouldn't have been able to do it without that, but just one day at a time, baby steps.
See, you can't do it all at once,
It's too overwhelming and it's too scary.
Yeah, and honestly, in anything in your life, I after my surgery, I'm like, okay, everything, nothing toxic, nothing in my house, nothing else. It was so overwhelming. It just drove me into this stress, cyclone of just, so the same thing with divorce and leaving a relationship.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. So, and the hardest thing too, I think, especially with me, my second divorce, my first one was very traumatic. My second one was, the father of my child, and left him so much, but it just wasn't, wasn't that, and, was the financial piece. How am I going to survive? But I always tell people, don't let that make you stay.
No, absolutely not. Not on all the money in the world wouldn't be enough to stay if it meant that it was costing me my mental health, and if it was costing me my physical health, if it was costing me my happiness and my joy, it's not worth it,
Right.
And so I definitely believe that as well.
Why did you finally say, it's time? I mean, what was the catalyst of,
Yes.
And you said that it was you too. And, maybe we decided it wasn't, we've done all we can do.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't say it was one last thing. It was the combination of multiple things for years and years and years that just kept happening. And I started to notice there was the pattern of we would have the big fight, the behavior would happen or whatever. And then, then we would not talk for a few days, and then we would, end up making up, and then like false promises would happen, and, oh, I promise I won't do this again. And, all the things. And then I would get sucked back in, and I would believe that. And then, it would happen all over again. So it's just like this vicious cycle. And once I started to realize this cycle, I realized that this is a pattern, and I don't want to be in it anymore. And I started watching videos on YouTube. Dr. Romney is one of the best psychologists that I know of on YouTube that really helped me. And I watched a lot of her videos and gained a lot of knowledge about these unhealthy relationships. And that really started to sort of open my eyes to what was going on. And I sort of became an observer in what was going on. I tried to sort of have a bird's eye view of what was happening. And I was doing a lot of journaling. And then like I said, I started to notice it in my body. that I was having these panic attacks and anxiety attacks towards the end, and migraines. And that's really what was the last straw for me, because then I realized, my mind was trying to keep me there because it's comfortable, because our brains are hardwired to keep us comfortable. But as my therapist would tell me, like, you're comfortably miserable. But then, the trauma was going down into my body, and it's like my body was saying, this isn't safe. You can't stay here anymore. And so I was just, the panic and the anxiety was just so great that I had no choice. I had to leave, or else I would have gotten sick.
Right, because your body was breaking down.
Exactly.
Heather, what would you say to the person that's deciding to leave? What would the biggest piece of advice would be for the person leaving a toxic relationship? For me, my first marriage was extremely toxic. I mean, I think I told you, I shared with him, he murdered someone, went to prison.
Wow.
It was very, as a young woman,
Right.
just
Devastating
to death. So what would be your advice? Because at that point in my life, and you and I are, we've got
some wisdom behind us now.
we got a little bit of it. So
yes.
what would you give to that young woman or someone our age?
I would say you need to choose yourself, because staying in an unhealthy relationship, ultimately what you're doing is you're abandoning yourself. You're not choosing yourself. And I've also done a lot of inner child healing, and I truly believe there's, an inner child living inside of all of us. So we all have that little girl or little boy living inside of us. And so you want to fight for that little girl and stop abandoning her. So talk to her like, picture it as, like if you have a daughter, if you're in your 20s, maybe you don't have a daughter, but if you do have a daughter, my therapist would say to me, what would you tell your daughter to do? If she came home and said, Mom, this is what's happening, X, Y, and Z, I would be like, oh my gosh, you have to leave. Are you kidding me? And so you need to look at yourself that way and say, what would I tell my daughter if she said this to me? And then kind of envision yourself like that. Like, what would you tell your best friend? If you're in your 20s and you don't have any children, what would you tell your best friend to do? You would tell her to stop abandoning herself and start choosing herself.
Heather, that is so profound. A few years ago, I had one of my friends, dear friends, she opened up to me. I mean, I really want to cry with us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she said, Tiffy, if you were talking to Kennedy, what would be your advice? And I'm like, just leave. I mean, you have to leave. I mean, you can come live with me. But when it comes to your children, mothers, we do anything. But I do say that to women, and I still get very upset about this, but just, you can't,
Right.
You can't. And so when you put it in that perspective of what you just said, I mean, yes.
You kind of have to view yourself as that little girl.
Yeah.
Because we all have that little girl living inside of us, and you have to fight for her because no one else will.
Mm-hmm.
People will take advantage. People,
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
I know. What have you learned most from, did you learn more? You were at a different age with the first one. Did you learn two different things? I mean,
I would say, I didn't do as much personal work on myself after the first marriage because I got into the second relationship pretty quickly on. And so that's another piece of advice I would say to women, and I need to take this myself, is don't jump into another relationship until you've done your healing. Dr. Ramani, who's my big mentor, and I love her on YouTube, she says, you need to be single at least a year, if you've been married for a while. And I think a year is like maybe not even enough before you start dating again. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in the same type of relationship, different man. What do they say? Same man, different face.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened with me, similar, not the same, right? Similar. And so I didn't give myself the time to heal between the first two marriages. And so now I have been alone now for a year and a half. I have started dating a little bit, I will say, but I've done a lot of work on myself. I mean, I started doing work on myself probably 7 years ago when I was starting to go to these retreats and, the emotional center in California and all these things. And I did a similar one in Dallas. So, I would say that, you just have to stay single for a while and do work on yourself But the biggest thing I've learned after this second marriage was that, kind of what I shared about the inner child, is that I need to fight for her, that I have this little girl living inside of me, and that, I was choosing similar patterns that I saw as a little girl, because when I was growing up, my parents, I love my parents. Mom, if you're listening, I love you, and you're an amazing mom. But growing up, my parents, they fought a lot, and there was some drinking going on. And so what I saw as a little girl wasn't the healthiest of relationships, wasn't the healthiest of marriages. And that's, again, like I mentioned earlier, our subconscious is being programmed then. So in my subconscious mind, that's my blueprint of what a marriage should look like.
Right.
So of course I grew up and chose two men that had similar characteristics to that of what I saw. And so now I'm aware of that. And the first step in changing anything is awareness. So now that I have that awareness, I can have that full awareness when I'm going out and I'm going to start dating in the future and say, okay, I'm not going to pick that type of person again, that type of partner again. I'm going to try to pick somebody who's healthier. And since I've gotten healthier, hopefully I will attract someone healthier as well.
But Heather, let me ask you this, because we say these things. Now, I'm not talking about you. I'm just talking in generalities.
Right.
We say these things and then we're swept off our feet.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's really hard.
It's really hard. It's dashing. You're obviously in the beginning of a relationship. It's so, you're adrenaline and I can't remember what the words is, but
you get all these brain chemicals in your mind and the serotonin and the dopamine. For sure. I would say number one, this is my best piece. Not like the best piece of advice, and I want to tell myself this for sure. When you're dating, I try to not sleep with them for as long as possible.
Yes.
Because if that's what really gets those hormones going, or those chemicals going in your brain, the serotonin, the dopamine, when you have sex with someone, like, your brain is getting this cocktail of good chemicals. Mm-hmm. And so that blinds you to some of their actions that they might start to show you after the honeymoon phase wears off.
Sure.
And my therapist says, like, anybody can, not even a sociopath can fake it longer than 6 months. So, get to know somebody, for 6 months, someone's going to be putting on their best behavior. So you really don't know anybody until 6 months. And I would say even like a year. Am I saying don't sleep with anyone for an entire year? No, but maybe a few months we should definitely wait.
Sure.
Because it can blind you of reality. It can blind you of reality. And one of the best things too that my therapist told me in order to really face my reality and accept what was going on is make a list. If you're already in an unhealthy relationship, you can make a list of the top 10 things that they've done to you so that you don't forget that. So that when you start to get sucked back in, you can pull that list out and you can look at it and you can read it and you can say, this is my reality. I'm not going to sugarcoat it anymore. I'm not going to deny it anymore. I'm not going to minimize it. This is my reality. And if I want this reality to change, then I have to do something different with me.
Right.
I might need to remove myself from the relationship.
Right. Well, I'm glad you said that, because I say that to a lot of young women and women my age too. I'm like, don't sleep with them. My Lord, stop. Of course it's going to be, it's going to be fabulous or not.
Right. But they have to get to know you. And that, of course, that's what guys want to do with women. That, of course, that's what they want. And if you don't think it is, they do. Yeah. Every single guy, number one thing that they want eventually or right away is to sleep with you, of course. So you want to try to find the guy that wants to sleep with you and wants to get to know you.
Yes.
And you won't know if he wants to get to know you unless you make him wait to sleep with you.
Exactly. And if they don't wait, see ya, people.
Yes, exactly. Then you're not the guy for me.
Exactly.
Like I always say, if you let go of toxic people, you're making room for the right people to come along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You and I have talked about red flags, and oh my gosh, my first marriage. Are you joking? They were just
everywhere.
Everywhere. And I was too young. I don't know. My frontal lobe probably wasn't developed in my young 20s, but I just look there at that young girl. You just talked about a young girl, and I do get so upset and mad at her. But that's the experience. It's made me who I am today.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it didn't help me along the way. But but you know what I mean? So the red flags. Are you, I'm not sure. Did you tell me you are dating a little bit?
Yes. Okay. No, I've been dating quite a bit. So I've been out with probably 10 or 12 guys, and
Wow.
maybe 2 were sort of longer than 1 or 2 dates. And I
Okay.
learned lessons from all of them because I love Mel Robbins. I don't know if anybody listens to Mel
Yes.
Robbins. She's one of my favorites. And she says, when men come into your life, it's either love or it's a lesson. And so obviously all the guys, have been lessons, right? So, I mean, my marriages were love and lessons, but the guys that I've been dating, it's been, I've learned lessons from them. For sure. And I just got out of maybe a 2-month little whatever fling, you could call it. We went out on 7 dates, and he's a great guy, but at the end of the day, we wanted 2 different things. He really didn't want to be in a committed relationship. And I'm looking to, I don't want to be super serious, but like, I don't want to just be one of 5 girls that someone's dating. And so I decided to end that with him because we didn't have the same intentions. And so again, back to I'm going to remove people from my life so that aren't right for me, and so that I can make room for the right people to come into my life.
Exactly. Hey, I have a question for you because I don't know. Is there an age range for you?
I would say for me, so I'm 50 years old, and so I would say I wouldn't want to go any younger than like 46. And I don't think I'd want to go any older than 60. So I'm comfortable with like 10 years older. My mom and dad were 10 years apart. So I would say that would be my age range.
I know. I was waiting. I'm like, where are we headed here?
Yes.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yes.
I couldn't do it. I could not date a boy toy.
You couldn't do younger?
No.
Not even 5 years younger?
Oh, yeah, I could do that.
Okay.
20s?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
No. I had a 34-year-old who wanted to date me a couple months ago, and I was like, I can't do it.
You couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it.
One
Too
day?
young.
No. I mean, what do you talk about?
I'm like, you don't. This could never happen. And he was just like, well, why not? And I'm like, well, because you're too young for me. Like, it's not going to work.
I have a friend literally that's dating someone in her 20s, and she's in her 50s.
Well, you know what?
Good
I
for
think
her.
That's amazing.
But I'm
Good
like,
for
what
her.
do you talk about? She's like, we don't talk.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. No, there you go.
There it
Just
is.
a little
Back to
fun
the
and
sex
hey,
thing.
yeah.
there it is.
Exactly.
I couldn't keep up with that.
Yeah, no.
menopause
Oh my
for the love.
gosh, right.
I know.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to ask you, what does self-love actually mean to you?
Okay, no, that's a great question. And a lot of people think that self-love is like, oh, it's more like self-care. Like, oh, if I'm eating healthy and if I'm sleeping enough and if I take a bubble bath at night, like, yes, those are loving things you do for yourself. And to me, those are more self-care, right? And those are important things. Don't get me wrong. I definitely believe you should do all those things, exercise, all those things. But to me, and I've really sort of come to this realization recently, is that self-love is loving yourself when you make mistakes, because I'm super hard on myself. And I just am. I have been since I was a little girl. And so when I mess up, because of course I'm human. When I make a mistake, I'm really hard on myself and I beat myself up about it and I get really upset about it. And it's like, and then I have to kind of use that analogy again. Like if my daughter came to me and she made this same mistake, like maybe this is kind of what happened. I was in a situationship with a guy, and I kept entertaining him for too long. And every time I would beat myself up. And I would literally be on my living room floor in tears, just like so frustrated with myself. But then I'm like, if my daughter came to me and told me she did this, I wouldn't shame her. And that's what I was doing. I was shaming myself.
Yes.
And so having self-love means that when you make these mistakes, you just understand, okay, I'm human. It's okay. I made a mistake. I still love myself. I'm going to love myself through this mistake. I'm going to have compassion for myself through this mistake, because at the end of the day, the relationship I have with myself is the most important one that I will ever have. Mm-hmm. And so if I can have compassion for my daughter, then I definitely need to have compassion for myself and that little girl that lives inside of me.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you this question because many, many, many times I've been asked this with, therapists and coaches and neuroscientists on the show. Do you love yourself?
I do love myself. Do I, if some people might, and here's immediately what I thought, which is my critic that just came out for a split second.
Yeah, I saw it in your eyes.
And what I was about to say is, and what some people might think, it's like, well, if you loved yourself, like, why would you have stayed in those unhealthy relationships? And hey, that's a fair question. But I loved myself enough to get out of them. And so I'm learning to love myself. Do I love myself perfectly? Absolutely not, because I'm not perfect. But I'm learning to accept that, and I'm learning to love myself more and more every day. But it's hard.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It is. You know, if someone asked me that my first marriage, the answer was like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Because there was so much shame associated with my first marriage, in childhood, you know.
Yeah.
And the second one, I was so guilty. I felt
Yes.
so guilty.
Guilt.
And I was still not saying it, but I have learned to love the person I am. You know what I mean? And the flaws, oh yeah,
Yes.
they're there, okay? Yeah, no. And I, again, started this podcast to share my success and my mistakes, which I learn more from my mistakes than I do.
Absolutely.
Look at
So
us.
I'm trying to take my pain and use it for my purpose.
For sure.
And so I think I've heard a lot of people, successful people like yourself, say this, that they have learned more from their failures
Yes.
than from their mistakes or than from their successes. And if you're not failing, also I've heard, then you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
You know, so I try every day, you know.
Yeah.
And
And one time I went out with this guy that this is many years ago, and I asked him, I said, have you ever made a mistake?
Yeah.
He went, no.
what?
For sure.
That's a red flag.
For sure.
Yeah.
But you have a divorce. That wasn't my problem. That wasn't my mistake.
That's a
See
red
ya.
flag. You
Gotta
own
go.
your part.
Yeah, you got to own your parts.
That's a
And
great question too to ask when you're dating somebody, if they haven't been married, then even a previous relationship that failed, like what was your part in that
Yeah.
in that divorce? That's a great question for any first or second or third date when you're trying to get to know somebody.
And we all have.
Yes.
I mean, we all, no one's perfect.
No,
Jesus
no.
Christ wasn't perfect.
Right.
But, okay, I'm going to ask you, are you going to do it again? Are you going to get married again?
I want to, yes. But am I scared to get married again? A little bit.
Heck yeah,
You know,
you are.
I'm scared of it. You know, I'm scared of the possibility that it would fail. But you know what? I also know this, that even if it did, I know I would be okay. I know.
Yes, you
I know at the
will.
end of the day, I'll be okay no matter what. And so that's why I think I am willing to try again, because I know I'll be okay no matter what.
You know what, Heather? I think that you have what we talked about 30 minutes ago. You have enough people in your life that are going to assure you that you're not going to do this again. You know what I mean? Like you're going to make mistakes, but we're not going to let you. You know?
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. My friend Kathy says, oh my gosh, the second you think you meet the one, she's like, I have to meet him to make sure. Like, I'm a really good judge of character. I'm like, I'm going to have that person meet so many people. So, so get ready, whoever you are, whoever the next, the lucky guy is, right?
Exactly. Oh, can you imagine after this show? Good
Right.
grief, all the men knocking your door down. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
I mean, Heather, for sharing this vulnerable time of healing and self-love. And, I've had a therapist on here, multiple say, stop saying failures. I'm like, that's what they were.
Right,
I tried to find a new word, but I just didn't. I mean,
I like the word challenges for that. Maybe that's a better one, right?
There's some challenges, let me tell you.
Challenges. And we grow from them. So, hey, that's a good thing.
How can our fabulous people find you?
So on YouTube, my YouTube channel is Heather Anderson. And then on Instagram, I'm So Heather Blog. And my website is soheather.com.
Y'all, we are here to help you. Message us, reach out. We are here. We're going to, exchange information. And all of this information is on the show notes. And you guys, if you need help, reach out. That's all you have to do. And you know what I always tell you? Keep being fabulous.